Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. Hope you're all well who's going to watch and also catch up later on during the evening or tomorrow or during the week, whenever you feel, whenever it takes your fancy. But I'm delighted to be joined by, first of all, McGinty, buddy. I mean, you have a portable green screen. First it was on your kitchen wall, and that's behind you. It's unbelievable. It follows you everywhere. How are you?
Okay, not too bad. The green screen's up because there's a what do you call that fucking sideboard fucking thing that people have in their living rooms, and it's full of fucking Wayne's toys and shit. So the green screen is hiding that until I tidy it up because I'm a lazy bastard.
Well, I'm with you there. Don't worry about that. There's toys over my floor. Not adult toys, kids' toys, obviously. And we're joined by James, the man who puts the buffer in buffering. How are you, mate?
All good, man, all good. I was meant to be on Friday, but I had gremlins in the works, so I nearly had them again the night, to be fair, but we got there in the end, so all good.
Yeah. Worked well first time, Some would say that's a high chance, I suppose. But Ross, what about yourself, mate? How are you?
Good, mate. Well, I'm good, but I'm sitting with a wee bit of heating, a wee bit of hot water. My boiler's knackered, so I'm going to have to dig deep and try and get a new boiler, I think, at some point. But it's just as well that the weather's turned and it's a bit warmer outside, in the sun anyway. But we'll get there. But Monday's done and we're looking forward to Tuesday.
Yep, that's the way it goes. Different days of the week. Always looking forward, I suppose. What I mean? Not looking backwards. But I'm delighted to be joined as well in the comments. Tommy55, Cluns McNugget, Scott House. I haven't seen Scott in the comments for a while, so glad to have you on board again, buddy. And San Fran Celtic is in the comments very early on. And as I said to you guys before we come on, we say this a lot now, but anyone in the comments section want to fire anything in that you want to speak about, whether that's people saying they want Rodgers to be sacked or Rodgers to go at the end of the season. Way up to, let's not overreact. It's only a one-off game, even though it's 3 losses in 6 games. But, I'll start with yourself, Ross. Going to McDermott Park, I know the optics of it. We had 3 stands, party atmosphere, so to speak, before the start of the game. The result, I don't even know what happened there. What did you even, was that you?
Yeah, I wanted to know what the button did. I didn't realise it was...
You're a fucking idiot, by the way. I just disappeared. Everything went. But no, as I was saying before McGinty chucked me off the screen, that it was party atmosphere. Obviously, the result the day that Rangers suffered. Who did they get beat by Hibs again? 2-0. The McDermott Park. You were thinking we were going to turn up there and really put on a show. Turned out to be anything but. And as we always do, mate, a brief summary of the performance, and all the guys will do one, and then we'll get into the performance and we'll talk about the nitty gritty.
Well, it was conducive to what we've been doing in the last number of weeks. Even last week when we beat Hearts, it was 3-0. That's just a really slow start. I can't remember. I know that Rangers kicked off against us. I don't know if Hearts did, but I feel like when a team kicks off against you, you're obviously most of the time going to be pushed back into your half, maybe the first 30 seconds to a minute. But Celtic haven't started games well, and they done the same at the weekend. They gave away a free kick early on, which was dealt with, and then they gave away another free kick, which was sloppy. And it encourages St Johnstone. That is what they're going to be playing for. Before a ball's kicked, they'll play for set pieces, especially when you've got a guy like I think it's Graham Carey. He's probably, I would say, he's probably, if not the best, one of the best dead ball specialists in the league. So it was, you don't want to give them encouragement early on, and he played a fantastic ball in for the goal. We'll obviously get onto that, but then it's early, and you're thinking plenty of time in the game. But similar to parts of last season where we were turning in like one half of a good performance, but not in 90 minutes, and we were struggling to sustain a good performance for a full game. That's been the case, I feel like, maybe in the last, I don't know, 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks, something like that. And it hadn't changed, and I think that obviously Rodgers has seen enough. Obviously, his comments after the game, which we'll get on to. But I feel like in that first half, it was very slow, the build-up and stuff like that. But I feel like we did create some chances. Obviously, there was the chance for Kuhn. Jota has a shot at goal. It just wasn't a good first half performance, but there was moments in it where we could have got a goal back. Second half, again, I felt we played a lot better. We moved the ball quicker. We created a number of chances, good saves, poor finishing, unlucky hitting the post. All culminated in just one of the days in the end in front of goal where it just didn't go for us. And another day we probably win the game 3 or 4-1. But there's a pattern where in the last, as I say, 5-6 weeks where we've not been performing to the levels that we showed in the early part of the season. And as I say, we'll get on to it, but Rodgers highlighted it. I think we could all see it for a number of weeks. But overall, I still think we've done enough to win the game. But just poor finishing, and as I said, unlucky hitting the post, and a goalkeeper having I wouldn't say he had an absolute stormer of a game. He got the man of the match. He made a few good saves, other saves you would expect him to make. So it wasn't like we peppered the goal, but I still think we've done enough to win the game on the day.
Yeah, it was an accumulation of a lot of things. A poor start of the game, and like you said, St Johnstone got encouragement very early on. I thought from my personal point of view, we were very timid. We were very passive. We lacked aggression, especially in the first 10 to 15 minutes. And St Johnstone grew into the game, and obviously James, they got their goal very early on as well. That seems to be the pattern emerging. The teams find, a killer blow against us early in the game. Obviously, Sevco done it, and now St Johnstone and Endless Celts comes in here. This comes down to bad performances being rewarded with game time, no matter how bad your replacement is. Being dropped is the only way to buck up your players' ideas. I mean, coming to that comment as well, James, what was your overall opinion of that game against St Johnstone?
Pretty similar to Ross in a lot of aspects. I didn't think we were great at all in the first half. I think Roger said it himself, it was 45 minutes wasted. It was just a total non-event. As you say, we're gone there. We know what's at stake. If we get a win, obviously we can win the league at Parkhead next week. And it was just so void at anything in that first half. We had a couple of chances, but St Johnstone also had a couple of other chances. I think the one, it just went onto the roof of the net. Don't get me wrong, it's a kind of slice of luck, but it was unlucky in the end. A couple of chances for crosses, and there was one where it was at Kimpioka, the boy that was in the second half, right enough, where he probably takes too many touches in the box. But nah, the second half, as Ross says, we probably did have enough chances to win the game. Forrest should have at least had one, if no two. You think he had Tati hitting the post, and then the keeper making a couple of half-decent saves as well. But overall, I honestly don't think we can have too many complaints with the result. And I was going to say it's probably a wee bit of complacency setting in, but if we're being honest, based on the form, I think complacency has already set in. And to just piggyback off the back of the comment that you brought up when I started there, I agree with that as well. I know we'll come on to talk about Rodgers' comments about players being comfy and things like that, but I think he's played quite a large part in it as well. As I said just after the game, I think Kuhn, amongst others, but Kuhn is probably the prime example of that. You watched him against Rangers, it was terrible, absolutely stinking. Get hooked at half time, and that's him started the 2 games since, and he's been hooked at half time again. So I don't know if it's just a case of struggling to get motivated, but then when you think about it, as I say, what was at stake going into next week, and you really shouldn't struggle to get motivated. That doesn't matter if you're playing Rangers at fucking 5-a-side, Tiddlywinks, Connect Four, whatever. You should always be motivated for that. You should always want to win when you're playing against them. But it's just it's a wee bit it's a bit samey. It feels as if we've been here before, to be honest with you. When it comes down to the play, sideways passing, struggling probably in midfield, no real kind of creativity or anything in there. It's all things that we've said before. as we were saying about the players, I know we'll come on to discuss it later, but Kuhn is the prime example of that for me. I suppose in a sense it is rewarding failure. I don't know if that's maybe a wee bit strong, but when you think of it, Yang, and I'm no Yang's biggest fan, as obviously I've said on here, but there's no denying in the last kind of couple of months, anytime he's come on, he's looked decent. And he looked decent again when he came on at the weekend, but he still can't seem to get a start, regardless of how poor Kuhn has been. Nawrocki as well was another example for me. I think Cameron Carter-Vickers has looked labelled for a few weeks. It almost looks as if he's carrying an injury. Whether it's tiredness and he needs a rest or he is carrying something, he looks labelled. And I think in the last couple of games, Nawrocki probably has, if we're being honest, and comparing just the two games, Nawrocki probably has outperformed them. So for me, it felt really, really harsh. And it's not even saying it after the event. I said it when the teams came out. I think Tony said the same as well in the chat. It felt really harsh to drop him. And I think when Trusty came in, he kind of looked like a bag of jaggies. He wasn't sure of himself. And I understand the reasoning was he was playing on the left-hand side and he's left-footed and the rest of it. But I just thought it was really, really harsh in Nawrocki. And there's a few other positions that I'm sure we'll come on to discuss, but I feel as if the squad could be managed a wee bit better in terms of who's getting game time and when game time's deserved and things like that. But no, in terms of the performance, it wasn't good enough. St Johnstone probably deserved it on the day, but we probably did have the chances. It was just one of the days come the end, I think.
Yeah, and it's a bit shit to be in this position. Obviously, we're going to be hopefully winning the treble as well. And Gav, nice of you to join us, buddy. I'll come to yourself in a wee second. I like the top you're sporting, very retro as they say. But McGinty, Strange Love, the doctor comes in, and we had 80% possession, 26 shots, 9 on target, 55 touches inside the penalty area, 11 corners. On another day, we cruised to a win. Even so, I've not liked the style since the RB Leipzig game. Every time I see RBL, it just reminds me of the Royal British Legion. I don't know why, but it always comes into my head. But McGinty, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, coming out saying about Rodgers' style, and maybe it is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to criticise that after a defeat, but there hasn't really been much changed. There's not really been much alterations, and like what James said there, I totally agree. Nawrocki came in against Rangers, done well in the subsequent game against Hearts, probably our best defender on the day, and then as soon as Trustees declared fit, he's out of the team, even though Carter-Vickers hasn't been great in the last couple of weeks. Much of the team as well, to be honest, is in the same boat. But what do you think about the criticism coming Rodgers' way in terms of style at the moment?
I think it can be a little bit harsh, and I think a few people are still holding grudges, be it from the way he left the first time or just earlier on in this season. I find a lot of fans, and I know I'm going to sound like I'm just, firing blanks at people here, but I feel like a lot of fans, they latch onto a theory and they didn't let it go. An example would be, August 2023, Hatate was meant to be leaving. I think he changed agent and he was down in tools and wanted out of the club. He then got injured and signed a new contract with Celtic, but there's a section of fans just won't let that go. And it's been nearly 2 whole seasons of people thinking that Hatate is, a grumpy, huffy little bastard and wants out. He's just Hatate. He can be fucking fantastic and shit at the same time in one game. That's just Hatate, unfortunately. And when it comes to Rodgers, I think there's some people similar. I'll even say this, be Greg Taylor sort of thing. There's some of us will make an opinion and just stick by it. And I think some people are still doing that with Rodgers. As Strangelove says, James is going to love me for the stats of XG being 2.2 goals in our favour. But that was a game yesterday that, the first 45 was pretty turgid, but the second 45, we 100% fucking tried to win that game. We had chance after chance after chance after chance. And if it wasn't for Woodwork, if it wasn't for the keeper having some great saves, we would have won 3 or 4-1 yesterday. You can't say that we didn't try. You can't say that we didn't have, the what's a good word for it? The gumption sort of thing to go for it. We tried to win that game yesterday, but there was something a bit lackluster in some aspects of it, which the manager needs to figure it out. As James was saying, you look at guys like Kuhn, he's been off the boil so much now this season that kind of August to November seems like the purple patch, and he's almost reverted back to his first 6 months at the club. He doesn't look like he's on form. Jota's in desperate need of a rest. Hatate's hit and miss. Engels is a development player, albeit at £11 million. He's still young. He's still in his first season at the new club in a new country and stuff. Carter Vickers is carrying an injury of some kind, I can only assume. Trusty is good in the European stage and just can't fucking get his head around domestically. He gets mentally bullied at times, but then the Rofsky's getting dropped. There's things that Rodgers needs to do to get some players the rest that they need, or drop them because they're not fucking good enough at this moment in time, and play people who are good enough, which would be Nawrocki over Trusty. Left-footed or right-footed, it doesn't matter. He didn't deserve to be dropped. Yang probably deserves to get a start over Kuhn. And I love Kuhn. I think he's really good this season. James Forster's back. He probably deserves to get a start over Kuhn at this stage now as well. And Rodgers needs to figure that out. So as much as I think some of the criticism's fair for Rodgers, I don't think we can turn around to say that, the team's not... Like, he's setting up the team badly. I mean, he set the team up yesterday to try and win that game in the second half, and by God, they tried it. But there's just some performances within the squad that are just not on par, and he needs to figure that out now. He's said himself that, there's a pattern happening. He's seen some things kind of creeping into the game. Fix it then, Rodgers. Fix it.
Yeah, totally agree, mate. And Tommy 55, Anthony, I agree. It is one of them things. Obviously, we went into some players, or we'll come on to like Kuhn and Jota shortly. But I agree with the side that you're saying, and I know we tried to win the game in the second half. Any game, Gav, you go into as a Celtic footballer, you have to try and win the game no matter what. But ultimately, we failed yesterday. So, first of all, mate, how are you? Second of all, as well, I'll throw this at you to start with the first goal we conceded. Fortune Slup, another mistake that leads to a goal for that. Taylor is getting hounded for that. So that's some reference, obviously, to the set piece that led to St Johnstone's header on target. And Slup seemed to lose his man yet again, much like he did against Sevco in the Derby game. But yeah, Gav, how are you? And then a response to MT Celts.
I'm pretty excellent. Today, Monday, I'm always off on a Monday, and the sun was out. And the wife was off as well, so we managed to chill out together. I also got a delivery today from the postman. An awesome delivery. Can you see over
Tax return? No.
My right shoulder here?
Danny McGrain.
Oh,
Messi.
Is it?
Messi.
It's a signed and framed Messi shirt, man. I'm fucking over the moon. I am over the moon.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not the reason I came on tonight. But no, I'm generally just having a good day. And I was watching a series of Mobland. It's the Guy Ritchie series with Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren, and Tom Hardy. It's excellent, by the way. We've done 2 episodes already. Excellent, by the way. It's everything that you would want from a Guy Ritchie kind of crime series drama based in London. Brilliant. See the thing that we're talking about with Schlupp. So Schlupp gave away the foul that led to the goal. Is that
No. Schlupp lost his man in the box from what it looks like.
He gave away the foul as well.
Oh, he gave away the foul.
Well, see, the guy who scored the goal, he was like running into the box, wasn't he? And like we're kind of like so literally we're just like jumping up. We're just jumping up. So see, when you're running onto a floating ball, it's so much easier to connect with that whenever the defender is just like from a standing position and try to jump up. And that was the same way with Rangers whenever Raskin got that goal at Parkhead. Raskin out-jumped Schlupp. But the fact is that the attacker who scored the goal, he's running in and he's got that trajectory to jump up at the same time and hit the ball in, whereas the defender is just from a starting position jumping up. I heard Kasper Schmeichel talk about it in that Gary Neville podcast. He said that we man mark, and to an extent, I did agree with him. But for the past few goals that we've conceded at set pieces, I was wondering, do we man mark? Are we like is it like kind of semi-autonomous? I don't know. Like part of his man mark, part of his are like zonal. I don't quite get it. Either way, past couple of set pieces that we've conceded, we don't look too good at it. I'm not talking about the whole general point that John made in the group chat. But if you want to blame Schlupp, then okay, I'm not going to stop you. But I'm not pointing him out as the scapegoat for it. I don't think we've got enough monsters in the box. I think the biggest threat we've got in both boxes is Liam Scales, and he can't get a game anymore. You've got Trusty, who's 6 foot whatever, and he's a bit of an infant in the box sometimes. And saying that might sound kind of unfair, because against Atlanta in Italy, he was brilliant. Atalanta, pardon me. He was brilliant, with all those aerial balls that came in. So, but he's been kind of lacking. For that particular goal, if you want to blame Schlupp, fair enough, man. I'm not going to argue with it. But I just think as a collective, we don't defend our box well enough.
Well, Gav, what do you make of the reaction? Because I remember you after the Derby game, and I think I'm going to quote you wrong here. Forgive me if I do, but I think you said it's just not fucking good enough. Something along them lines. Obviously, we got beat again. We've suffered another defeat in domestic competition. I mean, how are you feeling? I mean, obviously the spill out falls onto social media, and you see the overreaction comments about Rodgers leaving or getting sacked, and just random stuff that come out after defeats like this. Obviously, people are angry in the heat of the moment, but it's still bubbling under the surface. I think James or McGinty said at the start of the podcast that some people haven't let go of the grudge that they might have held when he left the first time. Do you think that plays a part in the reactions after games like this, or is it a pattern that we're seeing at this moment in time?
Right. Okay. So you're probably right in quoting me that it's not fucking good enough. I totally stand by that, and I genuinely haven't gotten over the fact that we lost 3-2 at Parkhead to Rangers. I'm still really, really unhappy about it. And I think that if we were to play Rangers tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if the same outcome happened again. I would not be surprised. I don't think that we've learned our lessons. And for all the talk that Brendan Rodgers has given out to the media to say that some people have checked out or whatever, or that they're, I don't know, whatever. We saw it coming. We saw it coming in that game. To the people who are talking about who've got a grudge against Brendan Rodgers, I don't really care about that. If people have got a grudge against Brendan Rodgers, then you're probably not going to be able to kind of shake that belief. Some people, I think McGinty spoke about it earlier on, some people are entrenched in their views, and no matter what happens, events or different attitudes, people are unable to be shaken out of that trench. I don't have a grudge against Brendan Rodgers. Whenever he left, and I've gotten over it. He came back, and it was a kind of PR exercise. And so far, it's been great. It's been really, really good. It's been brilliant. In fact, we're on course for a treble. And I don't know if this is one of the themes of tonight, is we're on course for a treble, but we're still on course for getting beat potentially 3 times by Rangers.
Well, Nadas, you've brought it up.
That's what I can't get over. But no, I haven't gotten over the defeat for Rangers. For me, it's still unacceptable, and I don't think that we've woken up from our slumber. And I think it's been long lasting. It stretches back before that game at Parkhead against Rangers. But to the people who are unable to, if you can't forgive Brendan Rodgers, then okay, some people are just going to hate. I don't think that's a majority. I think that's a very small minority of Celtic fans. I think a lot of us have got the ability to change our minds. People might hurt you, but when they come back and they give you enough evidence to kind of change your mind, then you should be able to change your mind. I'm sorry to quote Simon Jordan here, but what's the point of a mind if you're unable to change your mind? So, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. I'm more on about the reaction as well. Do you know what I mean, Ross? And you look at Strange Love the Doctor here. Last 6 games, we've lost 3 and won 3. That simply isn't good enough for Celtic. It's Sevco. I don't know who Sharts are, but it's Sevco or Hearts. Or Hearts level. There we go. I get it now. But and then you've got the opposite opinion of Sam Fran, who says we've become the most entitled support in the world. It's all this back and forth, especially after defeats. And you know, I do agree, but Gav, I mean, I'm going to admit it. I harboured a lot of resentment towards Rodgers when he came back the second time. You know, it took me a while to fully accept him. Obviously, he's a class manager and stuff like that. But you know, then that sort of stuff doesn't leave you. It's always in the back of your mind, kind of niggling away sometimes. But you know, I've accepted him back into the fold, and he's going to, you know, entrench himself in Celtic history, obviously for the achievements. But you know, kind of married in as well. Ross, obviously we've been off the tangent. There is 5 of us on screen in total. I'm hosting it, so we'll all go on different tangents tonight. I have a feeling it might be a long-ish one, so hope people can stick with us and get their comments in about what they want to talk about. But yeah, I mean, what do you make of the reaction and the Sam Fran and Strange Love dynamic? Obviously, Sam Fran saying we're entitled and Strange Love saying it's just not acceptable.
I can see it for both sides. I guess it's probably somewhere in the middle. I think that absolutely in recent weeks, as I sort of alluded to before there, it hasn't been good enough. The performances in recent weeks, 5-6 weeks, it's been below par. You look at, I'm trying to think back, you look at the Aberdeen game, I think we beat them 5-1. Aberdeen had plenty of chances in that game. It wasn't a 5-1 game. Hearts, we beat them 3-0, but they could have scored early on. It might be a different game. The boy Wilson has a great chance at 2-1, at 2-0 to make it 2-1, I think. So we are giving up chances, probably more often than what we had been in the early part of the season. And listen, you can always give up chances in games, but it is happening all too often. And for Brendan Rodgers to come out and highlight that, I can't mind the exact wording, but players were comfortable kind of coasting a wee bit. I think for him to come out and say that, then as a parent, do you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know if he's done it in a sort of way to try and get a reaction for the players, a positive reaction. And it might be in the next game that he goes with the same players, just to see how they react to it and see what their mentality is, whether they want to go and prove the manager wrong and do better. I don't know, but there is. I agree with San Fran as well in the sense that every single time Celtic could go on a run 70 games unbeaten domestically. By the way, is MD getting any interference at all?
There is a wee bit of a rapper or something.
Water running or something, I'm going to take my headphones out 2 seconds to just see if...
I don't think it's you. Can't hear you, mate. You're gone. Ross, can't hear you. Did you stick it in right?
Said the vicar to run in.
Wow, that's incredible. Nope, can't hear you now.
Is that half an hour ago you were all slagging me, yeah?
But McGinty, you know, following on with what Ross was saying there while he sorts out his own tactical difficulties, you know, he was talking about what Sam Fran was saying there about it not being healthy as well, expecting to travel year in, year out. But for me, it's not acceptable getting beat by a team bottom of the league. And look, no disrespect, but the thing is, you know, we should have enough, no matter if we're 50, 60% of, you know, top form, to go out and play our normal game at McDermott Park and win it, not comfortably, but now he's really far away and it's a take, I can't even see him. But I mean, what do you think? Again, it's the argument both ways, isn't it here? And where do you land on it? For 2 wee seconds, Ross, are you back in?
I think so, Can you
You're back in. But yeah, McGinty, you're back in. Yeah, go for it.
I hate the entitlement argument that people come out. I didn't mean any ill will to people per se, but I don't think it's entitled to want and expect your sports club, who happen to be the biggest team in the country, to win every competition that they enter, or to at least give a fucking good account of themselves in every competition that they enter. I think everybody can accept that winning trebles is not an easy thing, and especially in cup games, you can't go into a cup game thinking you're going to coast it and win it. They're really fucking hard to do. It's not entitled to want to win everything they win. It's not entitled to expect Celtic to win the league and to win cups every year. That's not entitled. That's following a sports team. What is entitled is to have an unrealistic expectation that we're going to win every fucking game of the season. And we'll take it back to yesterday's game. We didn't win it, but we definitely in the second half tried our best to fucking try to
But
win.
McGinty, that's 3 losses and 6. It's not a one-off.
No, it's not. There's a pattern that needs to be addressed. There's a pattern of how teams set up, especially Rangers and St Johnstone done it well yesterday, being very compact and very in our faces. Teams know how to play against us now. They're starting to get that way. But it's also, was it 3 losses in the entire season? That's not in league season. That's not terrible. That's about bang average to lose a few games a season. That is what it is.
Yeah. And,
exactly, Jerry. It's entitled to be expect to win every game. But there's a difference between expecting to win every game and expecting us to win the league. To win the league is not to be entitled, or else why bother showing up for the league in the first place at the start of the season? If you're Celtic, that is. Obviously, the small teams, and I don't mean anything bad to them, but St Johnstone aren't coming into this season thinking we're going to win the league. Celtic do. That's not entitled. We're just the fucking biggest club in the country. That's just is what it is. Yeah,
and I think as well, James. I'll come to yourself in a wee second, Gal. But I think as well, James, you can see, it's the reaction. As I said there, it is because it's not a one-off. It's 3 losses and 6, and it's some of the wild comments I can let go and not really talk about because in the realms of possibility of Rodgers being let go or leaving at the end of the season is quite low. Although I found it quite interesting. There was a picture doing the rounds that he was walking around McDermott Park for about a half an hour, just reflecting and talking to the groundsman after the game. It's probably the most animated and angry I've seen Rodgers in his 2 tenures at Celtic. But I mean, where do you fall between this? I know we have it all the time in the chat. So obviously, some of it's tongue in cheek and not being entitled and bedwetters and things like that. But it really comes to the fore when we get a result like this, and especially Falicari with his earrings in, getting one up on Brendan Rodgers.
I think you hit the nail on the head, mate, with what you said. If it was a one-off, then you can forgive it. And I think we were on here after the Rangers game. As Gav says, it wasn't good enough. Had that game, I referenced it at the time, similar to Ange going to Ibrox when they turned as well 3-0. It was a one-off. It was a nothing game. It was dead and buried. You get out it in a shot. But this isn't a one-off. This is becoming a habit. Whether it's complacency or anything else, it shouldn't be. That's not an excuse. The excuse can't be we're so far ahead, the league's won. It can't be an excuse. You've still got punters turning up, paying their money. The players are still getting paid the same wages. The effort can't drop off. It's unacceptable for it to be drop off. And I understand Rodgers' point in terms of what he's saying about players getting comfy, but as I said earlier, Brendan Rodgers isn't faultless through all this. Even in that game alone, for me personally, I think some of the substitutions, well, one in particular, was at best questionable. The Idah for my Idah thing, I don't get. Plan B seems to be try Plan A with different players. It was the exact same thing. I don't understand, and I kind of again circle back to what I said previously. Like I've already said about Kuhn, no good enough, didn't deserve a start. We could have all said that before the game. Nawrocki did deserve a start. You were saying earlier about playing him alongside Trusty. Playing him alongside Carter Vickers. I think you could probably make an argument to play him alongside Trusty, if we're being honest, if he favours that left footer at the back so much. Alistair Johnson, I thought was every bit as bad as Kuhn against Rangers. I don't think he's been particularly great overall recently either. Starts every game. Ralston's played more games for Scotland this season than he has for Celtic, which probably tells you all you need to know in terms of what we think of Ralston as at least what the manager thinks of Ralston. I just think that what Rodgers says sounds good, and had it been a one-off thing, where I don't want to say it wasn't expected, because going into the game I wouldn't have turned around and said, I think St Johnstone will win, but it wasn't a massive shock to see the performance that we turned in. Certainly in the first half, the kind of slow, turgid, sidewise, refocusing the point of the attack, as he told us it was earlier. But then 2 weeks later, he came out and basically bemoaned us for passing it sideways too much. So Rodgers is not at all faultless through this. And to be honest with you, see the whole thing about people who had a grudge against Rodgers, I think that's just a thing that people say at this point. I think you're going to have your hardcore that never wanted him back. Right, fair enough. If that's your opinion, that's your opinion. But I don't think when there's genuine criticisms there, and I am no saying sack him, that's no for a second what I'm saying, but there is definite genuine criticisms and questions to be asked. There's questions to be asked about his recruitment. I know we're going into a kind of overall taking it in a different direction, but there's definitely questions to be asked of Rodgers, and I don't think it's
Bless you.
I don't think it's I don't think it's bad to put it out in the open and ask these questions, because it is there. We're all seeing it week in, week out. As I say, that isn't a one-off. It's the last 3 games against Rangers where we've turned in the same performance. We got lucky in the cup final and won it in penalties, but it's like he said yesterday, the way I felt yesterday, even listening to his comments after it, I just felt that's kind of what we've been saying for a while now. I would probably go back. I know you're saying the last kind of few weeks, certainly with the away form, I would probably take it back as far as December. If you look at our away form since December, it is at best patchy. Since the new year, we've dropped 14 points in the league. And I know it's a total straw man if you're anti-head Bhoys argument, because it didn't happen. But dropping 14 points is since New Year is bottling it material if there was any form of challenge at all. Would the results have been different if there was a challenge? You'd probably have to say aye, but that in itself isn't good enough. That can never be an excuse. If that makes me entitled, then so be it, I'm entitled. But I think I'm entitled to see better than I've seen recently. Like we said yesterday, you're going into even taking it back to the Rangers game, we were all going into that game and we're saying, right, we've had the cup final and we've been turned out at Ibrox. The team's going to be bang up for it, and we're going to go run all the tap at them, and it'll be like the first game of the season where we bet them 3, 4, 5 was getting mentioned. Then we go out and we turn in that performance, and you think, well, we obviously haven't took anything for it. I think Rodgers said himself after it, there was learning to be done, soul searching and all the rest of it. Come out the next time, nothing's changed since, and certainly in terms of personnel, formation's the same, the style's exactly the same. It's whenever we lose a game or we don't play well, it's always the same criticisms. It's never, like, for instance, like yesterday, for me, he absolutely should have went 2 up front, sacrificed a midfielder, even go 3 at the back, sacrifice it and put somebody else on, but he wasn't willing to do it. Be it stubbornness, be it belief, whatever you want to call it. For me, in Rodgers' first spell, and I take it back to the game at Ibrox, the 3-2 game, Rodgers, we got a man sent off, he went to the bench and he totally changed the team and he changed the game and we go to victory. I'm not seeing that now for Rodgers. I'm seeing plan B being plan A with different players. And the players are on the bench, certainly in Rodgers' opinion, for a reason. So I don't think it's a great surprise that when we bring these guys on, we're no turning it round, certainly recently. So, as I say, I'm not saying sack him, I'm not saying that at all, and I get we're still on for a treble and all that, but I don't think it's out the question to ask questions of him over his tactics, even the things he's coming away with, he's saying, the recruitment overall. Like, for instance, would you trust Rodgers to get into the window and spend a war chest, as they call it, Do you know what I mean? And you look back to last summer, I've defended Engels, I still defend Engels, I like him as a player. But when you speak about, in terms of transfers and transfer fees paid, if you look at all the big signings we made, can we honestly, hand in heart, and I'm probably contradicting myself because I've said previously the players don't set the prices, but can we honestly, hand in heart, say that any of them represent value for money in terms of the big hitters that we signed? If we're being honest, you probably can't. There's still time to turn it round, absolutely. But again, I'm going off for a tangent. My main concern when Rodgers came back was the recruitment. That I think in his first spell, a lot of his success came with Ronnie Dyler's team, plus Scott Sinclair, and I think it was Rodgers that signed Edward in a permanent. So that for me has always been a question mark. But I think there's a lot of questions to be asked. A lot of questions to be answered in the coming weeks and moving into the summer as well, definitely.
Yeah. I just want to make a point on that, James, about the recruitment side, and I don't remember where you would lie on this, but can we lay recruitment at the feet of Brendan Rodgers when I think the large majority of Celtic fans understand that the manager's not in charge of the recruitment?
To certain points, I think
the way we know how it operates at Celtic, and this is not a Celtic issue. This happens at all the major clubs around Europe and the world. Our recruitment team is responsible for the recruitment. So there's not many players in this team that you can say that's a Rodgers signing. Kasper Schmeichel is definitely one of them, because we've heard the stories about how he's had to basically go to his phone book and pull one out the hat for the club. Similarly, Scott Sinclair. If you actually look at the players who you can almost guarantee was a Rodgers signing, they've actually been a reasonable success. It's generally the club recruitment, is it not?
I don't think you could say that, mate. I think certainly last summer, the big hitters, at least Engels, Idah is the another one. Idah was as clear as day, Rodgers signing. I think Engels was. I think when you look to Austin Trusty, would we dip into a guy that's just been relegated for the Premier League to the Championship and pay that sort of money for a centre half if it wasn't kind of driven by the manager? I'm not so sure. When you look back to the first spell and how it ended, I understand we've all kind of done it to death with the John McGinn and everything, but there was a lot of like your Doris de Vries's, Kolo Toure probably it wasn't a bad signing. You can kind of be on the fence with him, but and it's not even just at Celtic. I think if you go to his wider career overall, even including Liverpool and things like that, the recruitment.
But without going down that rabbit hole, yeah.
There's a couple of gems in there, but overall, I think it's been pretty poor. And bearing in mind, and I'll drop a wee bomb in here, but Rodgers has in parts defended the recruitment as well. When you're saying referencing like Mark Lawwell and Congerton and all the rest of it, it's been defended by him in the past. There's absolutely a few, obviously, with how it ended, but I don't know if you can kind of just pass the buck for Rodgers with the recruitment, to be honest.
The recruitment thing is obviously something we can talk about a lot, but I do want to kind of bring it back to the here and now, because obviously the conversation tonight is going to take different roads and different avenues, and that's fair enough, but I do want to keep it relevant to the St Johnstone game and the kind of pattern of play we've seen recently. Gavin, Ronnie Pickering came in there. What a name, by the way. If anyone's ever not seen that YouTube video, do you know who I am? I'm Ronnie fucking Pickering. Unbelievable. But what's happened, Nicholas Kuhn, mate? There was a point in the first half when Daisameda took the shot, and he looked favourite for that ball. He looked like he was going on to it, and then out of nowhere, their centre half takes it away from his feet, and it looks like to me he maybe shirked out of it a wee bit.
Yeah, I remember hosting a podcast way over a month ago, and I asked one of the guys, "Are you concerned about the form of Nicholas Kuhn?" And the reason I was asking that is because I think subconsciously I was kind of picking up on the fact that he was a wee bit off the boil. He did brilliantly for like the first half of the season, and then it's kind of unfortunate that we had such a crescendo in our season halfway through. Whenever we played Leipzig and then soon after Bayern Munich, and I think that was a crescendo that more than one person has has kind of dropped their standards, and Nicholas Kuhn is one of those guilty parties. So I think Nicholas Kuhn, he's I don't know, he's an interesting player. He's got undoubted ability. He's got pace to burn, but it's about the fight in you, the heart. And if he's showing that in games, then he's difficult to live with. It'll be a fullback's nightmare, especially whenever you get AJ doubling up and bombing down the flank whenever you're threatening to cut inside that kind of double jeopardy. But he's not been showing that eagerness which he did exhibit earlier on in the season. And I think it's plain for everybody to see. And whenever Brendan Rodgers made the comments after the game against St Johnstone about people who they can go up for it when you're the underdog in a Champions League game, but you're maybe not able to do it afterwards in a regular run-of-the-mill league game, I think he was one of the top candidates. But the writing's been on the wall for a while for Nicholas Kuhn. But the alternative is Yang, and we all want Yang to do well. We love the story of somebody who we'd written off, but then he shows glimpses of his true talent, and we're still wondering, is Yang really worthy of overtaking Nicholas Kuhn for the next league game? Do you drop Kuhn and start Yang? That's a brave decision. But I think you can't get away from the fact that Kuhn set very, very high standards and he's not living up to it right now. Where is the problem? Where is the problem? You kind of wonder, is Nicholas Kuhn going to be you're going to see a one-hit wonder? Will he be away at the end of the season? I hope not, but does he look invested? Does he look emotionally invested in the team? I don't know. And it's really disappointing because on the other hand, Jota, I don't know if you wanted to speak about Jota later on, but I don't think Jota is really on form either. I think we'll see the best of Jota next season, but right now it's not really working well. And by the way, when James Forrest came on in that game, James Forrest, for a winger, that's the one position out of a team that you're always going to, that's the highest percentage of losing possession. But James Forrest, for what he does, and when he's getting older as a winger, he carries the ball so well. He's very, very responsible with possession, and it's such a great example for younger wingers to look up to him and see what he does. He looks for the angles, and if the angle isn't there, then he'll recycle possession. But he's always very, very brave in the ball, despite the lack of pace that he's got. But for Nicholas Kuhn has to do better. He's got no excuses.
Yeah, it's a strange situation. Ross, coming back around to yourself, and in terms of the Nicholas Kuhn, I don't know what's happened to him. It feels like to me, and this is probably just me being stupid, but ever since Felipe Yada's come back in, he's just kind of fell off a cliff. But I don't know if them two situations kind of married together. Joseph Agnew comes in. I'll throw this one at yourself first, Ross, as well, kind of with the Kuhn situation. This is what I'm talking about. It takes different wild statements and avenues when we lose a game. A question for you boys: has Brendan Rodgers lost the dressing room? Looks like it, without walking around the pitch deep in thought after the game, Ross. How do you feel about that comment? And then Nicholas Kuhn.
Holy fuck. That's how I feel about that comment. That's fucking wild, man. That's the kind of thing that, no disrespect if that's how he feels, but that's the kind of thing that really does my nut in, man. It's just people create narratives in their head that are just not there. Brendan Rodgers is a bit disillusioned with the way the team is performing right now. Absolutely. And for him to come out and say what he has said, for me, it's not a guy that's lost the dressing room. It's a guy that's trying to get a positive reaction out of his players. Because, as he said on numerous occasions, he said it last season, he wants his team to sprint over the line. And as the guys have said, I can't remember who said it, but they need to... I can't even mind what I was going to say there, but
what you're trying to say is that McGinty's right, is what you're trying to say.
Probably aye. But no, he wants them to sprint over the line, and they're not doing that now. So that he's looking for that positive reaction, as I was trying to say earlier. But was it did you ask me about Kuhn there as well?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Aye. For me, look, Kuhn started the season really well. Everybody was saying he was going to be player of the year. He has tailed off, and he's not playing well at all. I think I said a few weeks back that he wasn't playing well, and Yang had probably deserved a start. I think it was maybe off the back of the St Mirren game. I don't remember exactly, but whatever Yang had done, it looked like he deserved that start in the next game. But I said that because of what Nicholas Kuhn had done, and because of what Yang can be at times, or most of the time, then you would probably still go with Kuhn. And I think that's the reason why Rodgers is still continuing to pick him. But listen, players can lose form, and for me, that's all it is with Nicholas Kuhn. Listen, I've heard people saying that as he just had that sort of purple patch and he's back to what he was when he first came in, and that is actually the player he is. We don't know. Time will tell on that. But again, I think it's harsh, given what he did the early part of the season. I think it's harsh to take that sort of standpoint on Nicholas Kuhn. But I do agree that probably, for me, I think that in the next game, I probably would drop Kuhn, just to take him out the sort of firing line for a wee while. And James Forrest is back now. I would be inclined to play him out in the right. I know that Yang has done really well, but I think that over the course of the season and Yang's time at Celtic, whenever he has started a game, he's not done well. He's probably better at coming off the bench and coming into a game. So for me, I would probably start Forrest. I would probably stick with Jota on the left, albeit I agree with, I think it was Gavin said there, that he hasn't been like brilliant, and we absolutely will see the best of Jota next season, because he's still getting up to speed and he has had some really good performances, and he can still create moments of quality in games. And for me, that's why you still continue to play him, because he can do that. I look at the Kuhn chance. I think people, because he's lost his form and how he's not playing well, and people will read his face and go, he looks uninterested. He's not playing with a smile now, because he's not playing well.
He looks like a miserable bastard.
Aye, he does, but everybody would be if they were playing so poorly and things weren't going for them. For me, that chance, I heard people saying he should just be putting his body in the line. I feel like, I don't think it was complacency, but I feel like he thinks he's ready just to put the ball in the net, and the St Johnstone player is sort of thrown himself, and he's got that last ditch touch and just beat Kuhn to it. Whether it's complacency or he just believes where he is on the pitch that he's about to put that in the net, and the St Johnstone player is too far back, but he gets there and he puts in a really good last-ditch tackle. If it's the other end of the pitch and that's Carter Vickers that's doing that, we're all saying, what a piece of defending, absolutely brilliant. And we're not saying that striker has been shite there or he's not tried or anything like that. We're just saying it's a really good piece of defending. But I look at, listen, James has made a few good points there, and I look at the team, and there is players underperforming, and in the midfield, you maybe could take Engels out the team now and bring Bernardo in. Up top, out wide, you could take Nicholas Kuhn out the team. You could possibly take Jota out. Would you then go Idah through the middle and Maeda back out on the left? It's options that you can do. But for me, I don't see any way that Rodgers can be criticised for not dropping Cameron Carter-Vickers, for not dropping Alistair Johnston, because I think that if he drops them and we go and lose that game on Sunday anyway, and I know it's all ifs and buts, but if he drops them, then he's criticised for dropping his best defender. He's criticised for dropping Alistair Johnston and bringing in Ralston, who, for the most part, I think a lot of fans think that Ralston isn't good enough. Do you drop Carter Vickers and play Nawrocki? Nawrocki's done well for 2 games. I don't think. Listen, I agree. I don't think he deserved to be dropped, but I also don't think he's done enough to say. And I agree that he did perform Carter Vickers in the 2 games that he played, but I don't think it's enough of a sort of runny games, if you like, to justify dropping Carter Vickers for Nawrocki. And in the same sense, I think he was unlucky to be dropped for Trusty, but then Rodgers validated his reasons why, and I totally accept that if that's how Rodgers wants to play it. And I think people after the Hearts game had a lot of people in a lot of quarters and a lot of different podcasts and the Celtic support agreed that Nawrocki maybe isn't as good at bringing the ball out, and it sort of it doesn't flow as well because he isn't that natural left-sided player. So you understand why for me anyway, I understand why Rodgers brought Trusty back in. But yes, Nawrocki's absolutely unlucky to get dropped. But for me, listen, I agree with James in certain points of the team, but for the 2 areas, I think it's difficult for Rodgers to take a Carter Vickers or a Johnson out and replace him with a Nawrocki or a Ralston.
When I was saying about dropping Carter Vickers, I was only referencing the point that Rodgers says he wanted to play Trusty as a left footer. Realistically, if you were going to do it, you would have kept Nawrocki in the left and played him beside Carter Vickers. But as I said, it was just because Rodgers had said he played Trusty because he was left-footed on the left side.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Take a drink of Hanbury. But McGinty, it's, it is a tough one to gauge because I've seen people say players have down tools. Players are looking for moves. I've also seen accusations that Nicholas Kuhn doesn't want to get injured. People like this that have their eyes set on the move abroad or English football or whatever. And then you're looking at the bench. Ralston coming in, I don't think would make a huge difference. Jamesy coming in is only back from injury. So these players on the bench are there for a reason. Some are injured and some just aren't good enough. And I think it was Plunge McNugget said that Idah is a good enough fielder. And look, I'm starting to really get annoyed with Adam Idah, if I'm quite honest. I think he really doesn't do himself justice at the moment, coming off the bench or trying to earn his starting position at the top end of the pitch, number 9 position. And people say about wasting money. I don't want to label that at him, but you can't really put him in, is what I'm saying, because he just hasn't been good enough. So where do you stand on the argument that players have down tools, and how can that be rectified? It's not acceptable in my opinion. You're still 6-7 games left of the season plus the semi-final to go for. The players should be anything but down on tools.
I don't think they're down tools. Not consciously anyway. Maybe there's subconscious things happening. I mean, the kind of running joke just now is that it was Trusty's wedding at the weekend. Last week, whenever it was, so maybe they're all kind of basically just a bit hungover and a bit rough and a bit lethargic because of that. Maybe that is, but I don't think anybody's done anything intentionally for that to be the case. A point that some of you have brought up as well is like comparing Jota coming in and Kuhn's form. Kuhn dropped form in December, about 2 months before Jota came into the building. There's no correlation to it. It's just Kuhn's out of form. Engels started the season well, took a massive drop, picked it back up, and now he's in a down again. And some people are asking, is he worth the money? Is he the player good enough for Celtic and stuff? It's like, no, he's just a young guy adapting to a new club and a new country. He's just this is just life. People are great at the job most times. Sometimes you have off days and off weeks. It's unfortunate that it happens a wee bit too often just now. And Rodgers is the one who's getting paid the big bucks to figure that out and rotate the squad through. On the rotation of the squad, though, we're talking about guys like Nawrocki. I don't think he deserved to be dropped per se for the weekend there. But you're asking questions about, Should we bring Yang instead of Kuhn? Should we bring Ralston in instead of Johnston? And there is elements of yes, we should, but at the same time, the squad needs rotated kind of realistically. Because if we suddenly brought in Yang, Johnston, and Rocky, and even say Taylor comes back into the fold, which I'm not against, we'd all of a sudden be like thinking, hold on a minute, that's 3 or 4 big changes here. No wonder the team's not looking like it's gelling. So it needs to be managed, and this is where this does fall on Rodgers' shoulders. He needs to figure this out. He needs to figure out, right, Kuhn's not working, put Yang on. Start Yang. Or maybe Kuhn could do with...
Is it a system thing, though? Because if we're taking out a player just to fill a system, then if we're talking about a 4-3-3, personnel, that famous argument, but if we're talking about, changing players, I'm sorry to cut you up there, McGinty, I just want to come with this. And we're just taking out a jigsaw piece, putting in another one to see if it works. And James was talking about we should have threw caution to the wind and, put Adam Idah up top with Dice and Mieta. Went 4-4-2, played off the second balls. Maybe it's not a system thing. Maybe it's during game. If he switched it up a bit and noticed that playing the horseshoe or changing 400 angles of attack isn't working, try something different. That I don't really think it's like the personnel, so to speak. I think it's the use of the people coming off the bench. It's the what do you call it? Not being flexible enough to change positions within the team. Try something different. That's where I'm coming from. Just the difference of it all.
No, a bit of both. I mean, a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, whatever you want to dice it up as what we play at Celtic just now. It's quite clearly capable 9 times out of 10 domestically. Celtic put 4-3-3 on the table, play 11 players who are all on the top of their game. We're going to win practically every game. But the problem is that not all the players are always on top of the game, so you don't know this until the game kicks off. And this is why guys like Wim Janssen was an absolute fucking genius, because within 10 minutes of the game, Wim Janssen realised that the system that he was playing wasn't working, so he changed the system 10 minutes, 15 minutes into the game and fucked up the opponents because they didn't know what to do with it. Rodgers needs to do something similar. Rodgers needs to I'll agree the system needs to change, but I'm not necessarily saying that we have to rip up the entire 4-3-3, the entire ethos of what Rodgers is trying to do. I think his default is fine, but in game he needs to flip it around, and if that is to go 2 up top, so be it. Try it. Let's see what happens. If it's to go 3 at the back with wing backs, try it. Let's see what happens. But we can't. I don't think we can go this far into a season and suddenly now change the whole system, change the formation, and change 5 or 6 players all at one time and throw them into it and say, right, go for it, that'll freshen it up, because that's practically starting from scratch. You need a whole pre-season of bedding that shit in. I think this is what the manager's paid the big bucks for, and that he needs to figure this out and implement some sort of change, be it in-game management or the personnel before it goes, because if the personnel are on bad form running week to week, you need to change that first and foremost. If it's in-game that you realise that your default position isn't working for you, you need to change that in-game, regardless who the personnel is.
Yeah, well, I get that. Go ahead, Ross.
Are we actually saying that in that second half that the system that Celtic were playing didn't work? Because for me...
No, I'm...
I'm not saying
I think I'm agreeing with you, Ross, on that one. Absolutely.
I know, I'm not saying you.
The system was fantastic. It worked. We just didn't get the end product. But even that, you can't say, and this is where I'll go back to what I was saying earlier, you can't win them all. The players played well. We hit the post. Forrest could have had 2 or 3 himself. Jota was a yard away from poking it in the back of the net. I think it was perhaps St Johnstone with the ball from the right side. We could have been 3, 4, 5 goals up in that second half easily. And I wouldn't say it's because the players were having off games in the second half. I think the players were playing pretty fucking well. I wouldn't say it was the system. I think at that point you just have to hands up. St Johnstone played a good game of football against us. Well, they played a defensive game of football against us, and they nullified us. They got what they deserved. We didn't. Or maybe we did get what we deserved. But we're talking back to what James's point is. We're talking about a pattern over now 5-6 weeks, a pattern over a few games against Rangers. we need to figure this out above and beyond. But yesterday, you kind of have to chalk that one off almost yesterday. But there is a pattern that still needs to be addressed.
You can't chalk it off, McGinty. You can't. It's the bottom of the league team that beat us. You know, and I understand what you're saying, Ross. Look, the system might have worked in the essence where we created opportunities, but at the end of the day, we lost the game. Do you know what I mean? So the system worked in an aspect of we created, what was it, 9 shots on target, and Andy Fisher and that's made a couple of cracking saves, to be fair. All I was really saying was, if we're in a game and, you know, it's back, the other team sitting in that low block, why can't Rodgers go, you know what, let's mix this up a bit. Let's do something they might not expect. Try to be different instead of sticking to the same thing, you know, all the time. That's all I was really saying there.
Sorry.
Sorry, mate. Sorry. I would just flip it in its head because you'll probably moan at me as well. But I would flip it in its head and say that it was the same system that he played in the first half, and it was the first half that lost us the game. So in the second half, you're 1-0 down to the team at the bottom of the league. They're not going to come out and look. I think the Fatima Whitbread, their manager, deserves a lot of credit. I think since he's come in, he's played a lot of nice football. I don't think the other backs to the war team, even yesterday, I think they had some more chances. I wouldn't say they were sitters as such, but they did have more chances. But even moving forward, I wouldn't be against doing something kind of rogue that we haven't seen before. I don't think he's going to stray away for the 4-3-3, but see if we maybe put Schlupp into the middle, is that kind of holding mid, or even like a Johnny Kenny or even a Jota just playing in as like a number 10 or just something different, just to see how it goes, to be honest with you.
See, for me, I don't think we need to change the system as drastically as maybe what some people do. I think that the system is still working. When Celtic are playing with urgency and they look bothered and they're trying, the system works. It worked in the second half, albeit we didn't score the goal, and we should have. But the overall system for me works. The issue at the moment for me is sustaining the urgency, the good play for a full 90 minutes. And it, as I said earlier in the podcast, it goes back to Rodgers' early sort of part of his second tenure, and that they were doing that in the first season there, where they weren't sustaining good play for a full 90 minutes. I think that when Celtic are showing urgency and they're trying... That's the wrong phrase. I was going to say try to win the game, but they're always trying to win the game. But when they're showing that urgency and the cohesion, and the issue for me is they need a rollicking or whatever in the half time to go and do that. That's the issue. There is that. I think that's why Rodgers is saying there's people playing with a comfort, and it's until they get read the riot act sort of thing, then they react and they go and try and win the game. That's not good enough. They should be doing it for the off, especially. And I know people will say they've got that big cushion. Aye, they have got that big cushion, but we're trying to win the league title. We're trying to get it over the line as soon as we can. I don't want to be going into the split and still not have it over the line. That's the issue for me. The system is still working, but the complacency and the comfort of the players, and they're not doing it for a sustained 90 minutes. Whether it be tiredness, I don't know, but they're down to one game a week now. So tiredness for me, albeit it's later in the season now, I think that tiredness can't be an excuse that they use, and I don't think it is an excuse that they will use. But I think that I'm looking at a lot of the comments up the side, and some of the comments for me, it's absolutely wild. Some of the things that's getting said. I just think that they need to sustain the system and the good play for a full 90 minutes, and they haven't been doing that in the last sort of 6 weeks. They've allowed Rangers to dominate us at Ibrox. They allowed us they allowed Rangers to get on top of us at Parkhead. And listen, you have to credit Rangers as well, because they've watched other teams, as I've said, the way they press, and then Celtic haven't. I think rather, like say in that Rangers game, rather than change the system per se, they needed to mix up the play, the way they were playing. Like, they were still trying to build out for the back. It wasn't working. Rangers were picking their moments to press, and they were pressing really well, and Celtic were failing to play through it. And in game then, whether it be on the manager or even some of the senior players, to just take it upon themselves to just mix it up a wee bit, play the ball longer, things like that. But for me, as I've said, I think the system still works well, but they need to sustain the urgency for a full 90 minutes.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think it's, as you said, the comments, I think, is the beauty of it. People just have different opinions, Ross, in terms of what they've seen and what they expect from the squad as well, which brings in the opinions and arguments, I suppose. And Gav, I mean, you've sat patiently for a while, kind of soaking it all in and what people are saying, talking about systems, styles, what could be changed mid-game, and, Ross referenced what Roger said about the players being too comfortable, and I think Ryan Clifford in the comments from the Celtic Unrestricted View podcast, I believe, was kind of saying the same thing. And then also added to that, I heard you in my ear when I said about Adam Idah being pish, and you goes, I agree. So I'll give you all that. You run with it. Tell me how you're feeling.
And by the way, as you referenced Ryan Clifford, Ryan Clifford is for the Celtic Unrestricted View, one of the hardest working podcasts for the numbers that they've got in their kind of crew for their Celtic podcast. A brilliant podcast. Check them out. For Adam Idah, I've said that for a while.
Can I before you go right onto that point, just pose you the same question I posed to Franny on Friday, and I want to start an argument / debate, but I don't want to be a dick about it. Is Adam Idah a flop?
Is he a flop? Flop.
Schlop.
You could argue that he is a flop. This season, he has been a flop. Yes. I was arguing in our podcast that his performances this season could be categorized in the donkey category. I wasn't saying that Adam Idah is a donkey, and I've had to reiterate a few times my position on this. I'm not saying he is a donkey, but I've seen that his performances so far this season have been in the donkey category. But I think if you remember the 6 months that we had Adam Idah last season, I don't think he's performed like that probably since he was playing for, I don't know, the under-12s for his primary school, for his high school team or something, when he was just the best player by far and nobody was able to touch him. Last season, that was the performance of his lifetime. He's never exhibited that in the Championship at all in Norwich. Otherwise, he would have been playing, he wouldn't have been the third choice striker. This season, yeah, you could say that he has been a flop. I think we and Adam Idah are going to be at a crossroads come the end of the summer. We want him to do well. You don't want to label the guy as a donkey at the start of the season. I'm happy to be proved wrong, but it's just not worked for him at all. It's not worked for him. And I don't think you could say that the system doesn't suit him or the tempo doesn't suit him. Like we're Celtic, you get a lot of chances as a striker, but just sometimes it doesn't work for you. We've had a lot of players who had pedigree, unlike Adam Idah. He doesn't have any pedigree at all, and it never worked for them. And you've had strikers who've went on and done better things, like Pukki. We thought he was a nothing player, but he went on and improved his wrong in the Championship. Adam Idah, we stumbled upon him. He did brilliantly for half a season, and I agreed that we had to pull the trigger on him. We had to bring him on board, but it's really not worked. I think Adam Idah needs to be. He needs to be loved. He needs to feel that he's the main man, and that there's nobody there to threaten him. And it's not worked out for him for one reason or another. But for a striker at Celtic, you need to be fucking ruthless. You need to have an arrogance about you. You shouldn't have that mentality where you need to be cuddled and say, you can do it today, Adam. Today's your day. I want killers. I want absolute killers as centre forwards. Going back to since I was a child watching Celtic, minus Jerry Craney, but once we got like Cadet, Van Hooijdonk, from those years onwards, they were all killers. A lot of them were killers, man. Viduka, Larson, Sutton, Hartson, Scott McDonald, Gary Hooper, so many brilliant centre forwards that we've had. People who proved us wrong, but Adam Idah is not going to be. Adam Idah is never a centre forward for Celtic, and I think we're at a crossroads in the summer, and we should get him to fuck. He's not even good enough as a plan B. We should get him to fuck, man. That's where I am.
What about the system, mate, and what we're talking about earlier? Do you think that Rodgers needs to be more, adaptable? Let's say.
I think what Ross was saying earlier on was the system is not the problem. However, there are times in games where you should change the system. So the system wasn't the problem for us going a goal down. That was just our lack of mentality, our lack of intensity, our lack of concentration. But whenever you're in the second half, and then you find yourself like half an hour to go, and you're still 1-0 down, then you should change the system. I'm a little bit suspicious about managers who don't change their system whenever the intensity provokes that change. Kind of like Ange right now, and we're Tottenham. Well, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole right now, but when you've got injuries, you've got a lack of personnel to do what you want to do effectively, and then you need to kind of change shape to solidify, to consolidate your position, or to kind of hammer home your effectiveness. But at the weekend, we've got the majority possession. We're playing against the bottom team of the league, and as Ryan Clifford said earlier on in the comments, but we've got the majority possession. We're making all the chances, but change up. Why are we still playing a back four? Bring on another forward. Don't take off a like for like. And Brendan Rodgers naturally does do those changes, a like for like substitution. So I don't think 4-3-3 is the problem. We've done it very, very effectively in Europe this year to many plaudits. But in the league, sometimes we need to change it up when things aren't going our way. And if your ego is getting in the way of finding a solution, then I think that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, no, I get that sentiment. I don't know if we all know that. Actually, I was going to say I don't know. We all know that Rodgers is an egomaniac. That Gucci belt and the Tom Fords. He loves all that stuff and strutting the stuff in the touchline. But James, Gav mentioned about being at a crossroads with Adam Idah in the summer. Rodgers said something quite interesting in his post-match comments about something in terms of the performances of certain players or individuals. He didn't say who, obviously. You also have to look at that situation in the summer. This is why I wanted to keep the recruitment kind of chat till now, in terms of what you and McGinty were speaking about earlier in the podcast. But do you sense there might be some sort of rebuild as players reach their natural end of a cycle at Celtic? Is this going to be coming into a point where we're literally going to have to rebuild the spine of a team again? Is it going to be that heavy during the summer?
I think so. I think there's certainly players in there that's probably ran the race at Celtic. If I'm being honest, I think there's a few of them very likely will be away in the summer. Obviously, Greg Taylor we know for definite's away in the summer, so Schlupp's in on loan. So you're going to need a left back. Obviously, Tierney will come in there. At centre half, probably we need another centre half. I would say. At right back, I think in Houston, I don't really particularly rate him. I think that's borne out in the fact that he's barely kicked a ball for us this season. So I would like to see a right back come in, but I've always liked to see a right back come in. It's never happened. The midfield, I think the midfield needs addressed. I don't think we can ignore. We've said it for long enough. We've actually made tangible progress in Europe this year. I think that there's opportunities there for us to kick on again if we sign the right type of midfielder. I'll mention his name again, a Victor Wanyama type, get him in for Dunfermline. and I would probably argue that we could be doing with a number 10 as well, just an out-and-out number 10. I think Hatate will be away in the summer, personally. And then on the wings, I know there's a lot of talk about Kuhn being away, and as we were saying earlier about no getting injured, and if Kuhn goes, then you're either putting Idah back to a winger and you need a striker, or if you keep Idah as a striker, then you need a winger. So,
James,
there's definitely work to be done. Yes.
James, what's your expectations for Engels next season?
I think he's got to kick on. Like I still defend Engels. I think, I don't know if a whipping boy's a bit harsh, but I think the price tag is used against him quite a lot, probably unfairly. And I know I'm probably contradicting myself with my comments in recruitment and value for money and all that earlier, but
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit.
No, absolutely. But in terms of I think the guy's been good. I think when he's played overall, I think he's been good. There's been a few poor games in there, admittedly, but I think overall he's been good, and I think there's definitely potential there. And it's the same thing that I've said for years at this point. All the midfielders we've got individually are decent to very good players, but they all want to do the same thing. I think if we had two of them with a holding midfielder, or two of them with a holding midfielder, really, then I think you'd get to see a lot more out every single one of them. I think when we put the three of them in there, McGregor sits the deepest, but realistically, again, covering all ground, I think he still plays his best stuff going forward. I think the Oddie, regardless of where Engels played for Osberg, I still think he's that kind of deep line playmaker type. We've seen him thread a few balls through. Obviously, doesn't do it in the same style or as often as Matt O'Reilly. But I think the midfield is, I don't know if I'd say we need surgery in there, but I think that's and it is a strange one, because as I say, individually, I mean, McGregor, fantastic. Engels, I think he's been good. I see a lot of potential there. Luke McKibben has been good since he's come in. Paulo Bernardo, we've not probably seen enough of him this season, really, but he's certainly not been bad. I can't even think who I missed. Hatate, bit hot and cold for me personally, and I think he'll be away in the summer. But individually, they are all decent. It's just, I think, when you try and play three of them, they're too similar, and they almost get in the way, in a sense, of each other. I don't think there's enough defensive stability when the likes of going to Ibrox are playing in Europe, and I don't think there's enough creativity like yesterday. I don't think there's enough creativity in the middle. It all comes through, obviously, the wide areas. So I think there is definitely work to be done in the summer, regardless of outgoings. I think there is work to be done there to kick on again.
Yeah, I just found his comments interesting, Ross, in terms of after the game. My Uncle John comes in. I haven't seen him on the podcast in a while in the comments, so great to have you along again. System doesn't work because, as people say, there's no plan B. No plan B in Rodgers' first term, no plan B in Ann's time, no plan B in Rodgers' second term. Where's the quality Rodgers promised? Ross, I'll throw that to you.
Don't know where to begin with that. Right, so put it up again.
Yeah, no problem. No worries. There you go.
So, system doesn't work now because there's no plan B. Right. So,
yeah. So essentially, what I think he's meaning is that there's no alternative way of playing, and then we're on here saying there's no plan B. But the real situation is to do plan A better, believing in terms of quality signings. Rodgers has spoke about athletic, robust players coming in, and Arnie Engels probably epitomises that, and Austin Trusty, but albeit they're probably going through a slightly bad run of form. But in regards to the quality, we've heard Rodgers say this on numerous occasions, hasn't really been delivered. Recruitment teams changed again. McGinty was talking about that, and with James earlier about Tisdale, the football doctors come in, so maybe the scope of the landscape of transfers will change come the summer transfer window. But where do you stand on that in terms of the quality? Do you think he's delivered
it? I don't know if the blame can be laid at Rodgers' door if he hasn't delivered it. I think that and in the first window when he came back, I think we all agree that it was a terrible window. I don't think Rodgers sanctioned a lot of the signings. But then you look at who's he signed. He signed Engels. I think he's going to be, or he has been at times, a good player. He's going to be a very good player. I think next season he's got real potential to be a player of the year. I think he's that good. If he listen, you've got to remember he's 21. But Adam Idah's been a big money signing. Obviously, we've covered that. It hasn't worked out this season. I'm willing to give him a bit more grace. And I know it grinds on people, but he didn't have a real good pre-season. He didn't have it at Celtic. I think that helps. That's the reason I'm willing to give him grace. But listen,
We're in April.
Aye, but what I'm going to say is, I said when Adam Idah first came into Celtic last season, I said that I wasn't overly impressed with his all-round play in game. I felt like he came up with really big moments and it elevated him to a better player. But then the Kilmarnock game, he played so well. I was like, if he's got that in his locker and he can produce that more often, then I think we've got a really good player in our hands. And I was quite happy for Celtic to go and sign him because I'd seen what he'd done in front of goal in terms of finishing. But this season, it hasn't worked out for him, absolutely. I mean, Gavin's smiling there. I fully agree with him. It hasn't worked out. I don't know. I don't know if we can say he's been a flop. And I do understand that we're in April. But he's not getting a run of games. And I know that, obviously, he wasn't starting because Kyogo was, for me, the better player. He's now not starting because, for everybody, Maeda was the better player. And we've got to remember that Kyogo and Maeda are Japanese. Well, Kyogo probably should be a Japanese international. He's not for the most part. But Maeda is. So he's up against really good players to get into that position. And for me, he's had wee fits and starts where he's been good. He's scored goals in the Champions League. You're not a poor player if you score goals in the Champions League. I think I'm not willing to write him off and get rid of him like Gavin in the summer. I think just because of what I've said, and I understand we're in April, but because he's not having a full pre-season and not getting a proper run of games and it being in fits and starts, I think that I'm willing to give him a bit more grace and see what he can deliver next season. And if he delivers similar to what he's delivered this season, then I would cut my losses then. But I think because of the amount of money we've shelled out as well, I think that we have to give him a wee bit more time, but also caveat that with the fact that I would like to see us sign another striker. And for me, if we do, then it has to be better than Adam Idah, because right now, I don't think, as much as I've said, give him the grace, it is a gamble to just go with him on what we've seen. But to go back to your sort of recruitment question, everybody's said that we've got no recruitment team, and Rodgers is leaning on his sort of wee black book, if you like. Kasper Schmeichel's come in; he's been a success. Who else? A lot of the signings are escaping me right now, but
I know.
Listen,
Idah, Kuhn, whoever you want to choose.
But we have shown improvement in Europe under Brendan Rodgers, and it's not all about signings. I think that Brendan Rodgers, for me, has improved Maeda no end. So I don't know where we're going with this. Has Rodgers delivered it? Rodgers has asked for it. I don't think he's the one that has to deliver it. He's asking for it, and then he has to go and get results with what he's given, if he's given what he's been asking for. I think he's been given it in certain windows he's been given the quality asked for, like say the summer there. I don't think he was probably given, well, he wasn't given the quality he was asking for in the January window for whatever reason. I would probably say that it's tough to lay the blame at his door in the sense that has he delivered that. I don't think that's should be the train of thought. It's whether the board have delivered that, and you probably have to say for large parts of Rodgers' second tenure they haven't delivered that from. But when they have, he has been backed in that summer window. I think he'll be backed in this summer window again, and I think we will improve. And as James says, that there is work to be done, but there is work to be done in every single window because you always want to improve. And Rodgers says that you always want to improve. It's not linear. It's not always that you can improve or come out a window stronger as much as you want to. But I don't, as I said, I don't think you can lay the blame at his door. But also as well, like you're looking at what I've got to the point now where I'm done with sort of trying to predict what we need and what we should do, because it never pans out the way that you think on paper it will, because you don't know who we're going to lose. I agree with James. I think Hatate might leave in this summer window, but then who's going to take a punt on him? Because I don't think he's been outstanding this season. He's shown, again, really good moments of quality at different stages of the season. Big moments that have won us big points at different stages of the season. But again, like we're sitting here and we're going, right, we need a defender because our trusty and Scales up to the job. But who knows? Carter Vickers might go in the summer. And then do we need two defenders? It's hard to predict these things and what we need because it changes in a heartbeat in football. So it's tough to say what we definitely need. And I've got to the stage now where there's no point in predicting it. I just let it pan out and see what happens. And then if you're not happy about it, moan. If you're okay with it, put a positive spin on it like I probably would do.
But see, to be fair, look, I think it's quite telling that the recruitment team has changed, McGinty. And one thing I find quite interesting, it was Maestro put it in about he thinks Rodgers will be off in the summer. Now, as I said, Gav mentioned the crossroads of players, right? Now, this might open up the floor a wee bit in terms of different opinions and also the comments as well. And I appreciate we're 1 hour, 30 minutes in. We're just having a general chat here now, obviously covering the recent events. But are Celtic at a crossroads, the Celtic board at a crossroads of Rodgers? If he's non-committal in the summer transfer window in terms of him signing a new contract, could they refrain from giving him the war chest, as James spoke about, if he's not going to be there for the long term? Or is that me just thinking, negatively and putting a negative spin on it, as I usually do?
It's a fair kind of debate topic. It's a fair topic to bring up. If you don't back Rodgers, I think Rodgers leaves in the summer. If he's going to get strong sense that the club aren't going to fund him and back him this summer again, because as much as we spent 11 on Engels, 9 on Adam Idah last year, 6 on Trusty. Yes, financially we spent a good chunk of money. We didn't get everything we needed that Rodgers needed and Rodgers wanted last summer. So there's still work to be done, let alone the other issues that we're now starting to see within the squad. Namely, probably the midfield, that kind of, as James likes to call it, the Victor Wanyama enigma, the big hole in our midfield. As an aside, if Hatate was to leave, I think that would free up the space to bring in somebody like Hatate, like a Wanyama type. However, we 5 midfielders, it's very hard to see how you fit a 6th one in, but it's somebody losing the place. So it would make some logic if Hatate was to move on. Anyway, if we don't back Rodgers, I can see Rodgers getting fed up. Will he see out his third year? I don't know. It would take some going, I think, to see him leave before that third year kind of happens. So I think he's proven a point to himself, to the Celtic fans, that he will see out the 3 years, but it would take some going for him to not be here next season. But I think this summer is going to be very telling about whether or not he kind of negotiates a new deal regardless. But what I want to say, though, after it is, I understand why you asked that question and why that's a topic of debate, because it's in my head. It's the same thing. I'm having that debate myself, but I still don't understand the logic of it, because if you don't back Rodgers then leaves, you get a new manager, and then guess what you need to do with a new manager? You need to fucking fund him. You're going to have to throw 20-30 million at the new manager so he can bring in his own players. So why not just back Rodgers in the fucking first place? It would make sense, surely. We're 2 or 3 players short last summer. We're probably more like 4 or 5 players short for what we now understand how the team is developed this season. We still need to spend another 30 million. Get those 4 or 5 players in, and then see what happens next season. And I think if we do that in this summer and we do well next season, there's a high chance that Rodgers signs a new deal. But if we don't back him, don't expect Rodgers here beyond 3 years.
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't expect him to be here beyond 3 years anyway. I make my predictions quite early and usually get them right. But, moving on, James, in terms of what we're speaking about there, I just wanted to see Ross's reaction. His face as a picture is always nice, shit like that. But in regards to, you spoke about the trust that you would have in Rodgers in the recruitment team get into the summer. That was in my head when I asked the question to McGinty. I mean, can you throw millions at a guy who's non-committal, hasn't really given any indication he'll sign a new contract? But then McGinty kind of flattens the argument by saying, if you don't do it anyway, then it's fucking, you're putting a nail in your own coffin, so to speak, and he will eventually just, well, fuck this and move on. So where do you stand on that one?
No, mate, it's very much a catch-22, innit? Like I say, there's definitely work. Excuse me. There's definitely work needing done in the squad, and that's before anybody leaves. I think he was back last season, and as much as we're sitting here bemoaning performances recently, at the end of the day, we're on for a treble and we have made progress in Europe. That's kind of big picture stuff, and it's the progress in Europe that we all kind of really wanted, and we literally made progress in Europe this year. So he's got every right to go to the board and be expecting at least the same backing as last summer, probably more so. The flip side of that is, do we trust him to spend it? I'd have question marks. The flip side of that is, if we didn't game it and spend it, I'd be the first one on here moaning about him not having money to spend. So, it's a bit of a vicious circle. But in terms of his contract, it is a strange one. If he's not going to sign a new deal, then it would kind of raise question marks. You've got to imagine that the board have asked the question. I mean, they're no stupid, so they'll know what he's thinking. They'll know what he's thinking. So if he's humming and hawing about signing a deal, are the board likely to back him, or is it a case we'll maybe wait till the trebles one and then touch wood and then announce that he's signed a new deal, and we'll log into the summer and basically forget about the conversation we've had until pre-season starts and we pass the ball between the centre halves again? But it's a catch-22, but I think you've got to back him. As I say, as much as we're on here mumping and moaning about watching us recently, as I say, bigger picture stuff, he has delivered, and he's earned us the money basically that he deserves to spend.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Ronnie Pickering in there talking about Mark Wilson and Simon Donnelly to be the new management team. And there was another reference, I think, for Smell the Glove for Scott Brown. Nice and cheap. Lowell's driveway can cover the cost there. Gav, but, I mean, what do you think? Obviously, it's all hypothetical here, and we're probably going down, stupid avenues, but I just wanted to ask the question there in terms of, can the board back him with millions if he's not committal to a new contract?
Well, he's committed to a 3-year contract, so why should we, in the second summer transfer window, not back him? And as McGinty said, it doesn't make sense. You're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you don't back your own manager. What you don't want is to create a situation where, let's say, for example, Rodgers is only in it for 3 years. I only think that Rodgers is here for 3 years. He's came back for a PR exercise so that him and his family can hold their heads up high in Glasgow without being taunted about his first stint as a Celtic manager and his exit. And I think so far he's going about it in the right way. So I think his intentions are to do the best that he can and hopefully deliver a treble, if not 2 trebles, before he leaves. So we have to back him in the summer, because why would you not back him? If you think about whenever Ange took over, Ange had an entire rebuild to do. And we were so lucky that he had Japanese knowledge of the Japanese market to exploit for Hatate, Kyogo, Maeda, amongst others. But those 3 were pivotal in the transformation for Celtic. And we've benefited that, not just in Ange's 2 years, but now in Brendan's subsequent 2 years as well. And now we're at a crossroads as well to say, well, Kyogo's left, Hatate is no longer that mercurial midfielder that we once thought he was. You know, he's a 1 in 5, 2 in 5 sort of player. Maeda's brilliant. There's no doubt in that. But Maeda's getting a lot of attention right now. Are we going to get a bid in for him? So we're at a crossroads as well. And I think that was an earlier point in this podcast tonight about refreshing the team. It's not a complete revamp, but I think we do need a bit of refresh, because I think it was fair to say whenever Brendan Rodgers took over in his first season, it was very much an Ange team. And not much has changed. But we need to back Brendan Rodgers, because if you don't, then the team will stagnate. And it means that whenever Brendan Rodgers leaves after his 3rd season and a new manager comes in, whoever it will be, Liam Senior, Ancelotti, who knows? They're going to have a big job in their hands if we've not done our duty in continuing to refresh the talent in the team. If you stockpile the talent and then you just let it go, and then there's this vacancy, then it opens the door to the Huns winning the league, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants that at all. So it's the board's duty to anticipate the cycle of when the Brendan Rodgers era is going to end, when some of the players' careers are going to end at Celtic, such as Greg Taylor. You know, you need to precipitate these sort of things. If we don't act upon that, if we're not proactive, then Rangers will capitalise. You need to be in the mentality of thinking that Rangers will capitalise on that. If you're just thinking that we're the richest club and we'll do best because we've got the money, then eventually you're going to get caught out. So I think, long-winded answer, I'm sorry, but we need to back Brendan Rodgers. However, at the same time, it's a collective responsibility. I'm going to kind of deviate away from my support from Arne Engels. I know that I asked James about it, and he said he was a talented player. He's excited about him. I've been supporting Arne Engels for a long time of this season. However, I am having some doubts about Arne Engels. And I'm going to say that we spent 20 million on 2 players, which I think could have been better spent on other players. Arne Engels is very young and he will get better, undoubtedly, about that. But I think 11 million in Arne Engels might have been a mistake, and I'm changing my opinion about that. However, so when we're talking about backing Brendan Rodgers, I've got a wee bit of doubt about how the money is going to get spent. The money's there, but who's this Doctor Who guy that we've brought in? We need to pull all our resources together and buy the best people to complement the team. But I think overall we had 20 million in our hands, and Adam Idah is the obvious candidate that it was a bit of a waste of money. It's not his fault, and neither is it Engels' fault. But I'm pointing the fingers at the board and Brendan Rodgers to an effect as well. I think we need to be more careful about how we distribute our money in the transfer market.
Can I just throw that back, right? And I am far from a bold defender, right? But see, in the summer, we sat here wanting to splash the cash. We get linked to a young guy for Osberg who had appearances in the Bundesliga, was on the cusp of the national team, and we all sat on here and said, that's the move that we should be making. That's what we're after. We heard Rodgers' comments and we said, aye, Rodgers clearly wants him. That's our number one target. Adam Idah, I don't even need to say any more. He was clearly the number one target. We chased him for long enough. Austin Trusty, I think it's fairly safe to say, is a Brendan Rodgers signing, considering what he said about left-footed playing at left centre half, and the kind of just the general comments and surrounding him at the time. Had we no done that and we punted for a cheaper option, had we no spent 9 million on Adam Idah and we go a lesser player, we would all be on here, maybe not so much now because it might have panned out slightly different, but at the time we would have all been on here moaning that we've got the money there and we didn't spend it. We'd done it in January. I'd done it in january because we didn't sign a striker. So I think it's a wee bit of kind of revisionism to say that no revisionism, that's probably the wrong phrase, but I don't understand how you can level it at the board. And as I say, that it's probably the first time I've stuck up for the board, but the board's job was to back the manager, and they did that.
Okay, well, in terms of the blame is at everybody. I was saying the board and the Brendan Rodgers, because the buck stops with Brendan Rodgers. So it's a kind of collective about pulling the trigger for 11 million on a player. It's at everybody in charge of in charge of the whole decision process. But you said, what if we spent the money on a lesser player? But when you're talking about a lesser player, what makes Arne Engels a better
lesser in fee. Look, for instance, if we went out in the summer and we didn't sign Arne Engels and the only player we signed was Luke McKibben or Paolo Bernardo on a permanent.
I don't think that the transfer fee is a true indicator of the player's ability.
No, I would agree with that. That's what I said earlier in terms of. And as I say, I defended Engels, but can we honestly point to the summer business and say that it represents value for money?
I think we had very, very good intentions in the window, which is encouraging, because beforehand we maybe didn't have good intentions. But I think shelling out high-profile transfer fees for players isn't a sign of intelligence.
I think we've all made the case, though, that for Arne Engels, £11 million, I think that for me, we were spending. I think he's still got he's got a project as such, but he's got potential.
Ross, I apologise for interrupting. Can I just say, and I'll let you go off, 11 million in Arne Engels. Is Arne Engels the type of player who is a game changer? Does he really, really affect games? And I'll shut up right now.
No, but what I was going to say is, I think that £11 million, right? I wouldn't say that Arne Engels is an £11 million player per se, but the argument was labelled at Celtic that we were spending £2-3 million on players who had potential, young players at 21-year-old, and they were coming in and they weren't good enough. At that first summer window, Rodgers came in, it was that type of player we'd been signing. It was that type of player we'd been signing in windows previously, and they weren't good enough. But the difference now for me is I'm quite happy that we've spent 11 million, whether it be slightly over the odds. I think that we're signing potential, but we're signing a player that has got more potential than the potential we were signing previously. We're signing a player that's a level up, and I'm quite comfortable with that. And I think we've all also made the case that this season, off the back of what we've done in Europe, that we said that the summer window was a success and that we'd signed Trusty, who performed well in Europe. We signed Engels, who for the most part performed well in Europe. We signed Adam Idah. Again, we go back to that. He hasn't had the best season, but he's scored goals in Europe. He scored against Bratislava. He scored 2 against Villa. But I think we've all made the case that summer window allowed us to go and make progression in Europe, which we did. And now, off the back of a poor period where some of the players have lost form, they're maybe being complacent, we're now looking at it and saying that these players aren't good enough and we paid too much money. I feel like sometimes Celtic can't win. I feel like, okay, we maybe did pay too much for Adam Idah. Okay, we maybe have paid too much for an Arne Engels because he's not an 11 million player right now. But for me, before Arne Engels leaves Celtic, he'll be £11 million, an £11 million player and then some. And I'm quite happy for Celtic to go and spend that on a higher potential level than what we have been.
I still think, for me personally, that people see or try and see Matt O'Reilly and Arnie Engels, and it's, it really does my tits in that they're two totally different players. And Gav, you mentioned, is he a game changer? He might not necessarily be a game changer by nature, but he disrupts games, he intercepts, he tackles, he's strong, he's quick enough, he reads the game well. Sometimes, yes, I agree, he gets caught in the ball and he struggles to take the ball in a half turn, but with time and development and coaching, that will all come, in my opinion. And it's not bad for a 21-year-old to have over 20 goal contributions in his first season at Celtic Football Club. Do you know what I mean? So he's definitely contributed at the top end of the pitch as well. Yes, they're penalties, but some of them have been pressure penalties, and some of his assists have been absolutely fantastic. And in the Champions League especially, I think he was up there in the group stages, or that group phase anyway, as one of the highest assists in the competition. At one point, it was on a graphic. I can't remember what it was, but he was definitely in the top 5 or so. So he has contributed. Obviously, the £11 million fee. People are going to look at that all the time, regardless. We try not to, but you're trying to weigh it up. With another player with a lesser fee just do the same job. We don't know that, but I agree with Ross in terms of that higher ceiling of development. He has that in spade loads. He's jumped into the national team. Yes, he's lost his place. People are saying Nico Raskin, blah blah blah. But Raskin is nowhere near the level of player Arne Engels will become. Arne Engels is 6'2". He's strong. He has so much more muscle development to do. He can get about the pitch. For me, he's going to be a really, really good box-to-box midfielder once all them pieces come together. James, you were going to say something, though?
No, I was just going to say, in terms of our midfield, each player individually, I don't think there is was that a game changer, was the word you used, Gav? I don't think there is one in there at all. But Arne Engels, I don't think was ever supposed to really be that guy. He came in for Osberg.
What does he do?
Pretty much that
James,
comment.
What does he do?
But that's my thing with the full midfield. If I was to ask you what's Engels' main attribute, what's Bernardo's main attribute, what's Hatate's main attribute, I don't think there's anything in there that particularly stands out for anybody. They're all kind of well-rounded, very samey players, and I include McGregor in that. And again, I'll stress the point because I feel as if when I say it, I'm kind of slaughtering him. But McGregor's been a fantastic player for Celtic. And our midfield, as I say, individually, they're all, as I said earlier, decent to very good players. Obviously, some of them are off form now and pretty inconsistent. But I don't think you could point and go, oh, Hatate, he'll win you tackles, he'll score you 20 goals a season. Engels, he'll get you 20 assists a season. I don't think there's anything there. I think they're all pretty well rounded, but no particular. And that sounds like a negative, but there's not one that's particularly good at one certain thing. If we were going away to Ibrox and Mora, McGregor would play holding midfielder because that tends to be where he plays. But I don't think McGregor is going to fly into tackles and win the ball back constantly. McGregor's tidy on the ball and he keeps the play ticking over. That's McGregor's strength. But we play him in a role where he needs to do a lot more than that. And there's some games where we get found out. Engels used to play that position by all accounts for Osberg. Granted, we've seen him play it in the last game at Parkhead against him, and it was stinking, if we're being honest. But he's been asked to play a slightly different role, but he's not quite a number 10. He's playing beside Hatate, who's also no playing as a number 10, but neither of them are number 10s, but they're no holding midfielders. And that's where my issue comes from. I just think if we got somebody in there, be it an out-and-out holding midfielder or even as a number 10, that kind of lets the leash after other players and frees them up a bit more.
I think
completely agree, James. Completely agree. Sorry, Gavin. As much as I've said earlier as well, take the 5 midfielders in McGregor, Engels, Bernardo, Hatate, and McCowan. See, apart from the fact that the names are all fucking different, they're all the same fucking player. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the problems we have is Stephen said, we're probably in danger of trying to make Engels comparable to Matt O'Reilly, when Matt O'Reilly was actually closer to being a Tom Rodgers, which is an out-and-out number 10. So we don't have an out-and-out number 10. None of those 5 are number 10, and none of those 5 are what people would call the number 6. They're not the Victor Wanyama. They're not a near beat-on for being a very poor example of the last chance that we had a defensive midfielder in that sense. Even Scott Brown was a really great midfielder, but he was kind of shoehorned back into a defensive midfield role the same way that we're doing McGregor. We're lacking either the real quality creative going forward or the real quality hard bastard at the back that James loves to ask about, which is 100% correct that you should. All 5 of them are fantastic players, but see, when all 5 are trying to do the same fucking job, nobody's doing the other 2 jobs that midfield trio needs to do, which is creatively go forward, or be the defensive midfielder. I don't think any of our CMs are 6s. They're all 8s. They are. Yeah, in a very, very simple way. 6 is your defensive, 8 is your box-to-box kind of engine room, and 10 is your creative playmaker.
Do you guys ever listen to... Do you guys ever listen to the... I'll hand back the microphone to you in a second, but do you guys ever listen to the old school footballers who talk about that whole, I'm a 6, no, you're an 8, no, I'm a 10, and they say that's absolute bullshit. As a midfielder, you should be able to do everything. That's the old school midfielders who talk about that, and it's modern day piffle to say, I can't do the number 6 role, I'm an 8, and you can do a 10. It's absolute bullshit. You should be able to do a bit of everything. There are specialist positions for people who've got unique talents. But all in all, Arnie Engels, Bernardo, Hatate, they should all be able to do the kind of the 6 to 8. And I think there's a lot of goodwill right now. There's a lot of goodwill because we've spent so much money on Arnie Engels to say that he's got the highest ceiling of everybody. But right now, for me, I am not seeing it. I want to be proven wrong. And I'm the first guy to admit to say, like, I hear a new song and I hate it, but then a year later, I'm fucking loving that song. But for Arnie Engels right now, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it right now. He can't affect teams an £11 million player to do.
I'm with Ross with the whole £11 million, the level of potential player that we've signed. Engels is a step up in what we would normally sign as a 19, 20-year-old development player at £2-3 million. He's 100% a step up above that kind of level. I think Ross is absolutely right that the ceiling is higher. Whether or not he goes for 25, 30, 35 million is debatable, but he definitely, after 2-3 years at Celtic, go for more than we paid him for. And I think he's a level above what we normally do. I'll shut up in a second, guys, but just to go on to the point that Gavin's making about the old school midfielders should be able to do everything. I get that, but at the same time, I wouldn't ask Victor Wanyama to play like Tom Rodgers at the same time. because they're
Literally what I was
completely
about to say.
woefully different. And I wouldn't ask Tom Rodgers to be defensive. You need that specialisation.
Neither would you let Coutinho to play as a number 6 if you've got unique physical attributes which dictates you to play as a 10 or as a 6. Then fair enough. But Arnie Engels, he's that physicality where he could play in any of those positions. But right now, he's not affecting the games that I want him to do.
See, I think
I can see where you're going with that. Yeah, he could be a bit of everything. I can see that. And when we take Arnie Engels specifically as the example, he needs to figure out, or we need to figure out with him what we want his position to be, and then focus him in there. But as a general, for the 5 midfielders that we have, I think they're all very much the same kind of player. They're all that jack of all, master of none sort of kind of player.
We see that point you're making, Gavin, about midfielders should be able to do a bit of everything. I 100% agree with that. But I think the problem is with Celtic in the midfield. I think that you want your midfielders to be able to do a bit of everything, but you want to have one that can do the 6 role better than any of the others. You want to have one that can do the 8 role better than any others, and you want to have one that can do the 10 role better than any others. And as James says, they're all well-rounded players, decent players. But I think it was Strangelove made the comment, and I totally agree with it. They're all well-rounded players, but they can, for me, Engels can do the 8 role better than any of his other attributes allow him to do. I think Callum McGregor can do the 8 role better than any of his other attributes allow him to do, but he can also do the 10, I think, better than what he can do the 6. Who was the other one? Rio Hatate. Again, I think all his attributes allow him to do the 8 role better than... And I think that's why, as James says, it's all very samey. And we need to have other well-rounded players, but a well-rounded player that can do the 6 role better than any of the other guys in the team. We need another well-rounded player that can do the 10 role better than any other guys in the team. I think that's the issue for the midfield. But I do agree with you that you want your midfield player, whoever it may be, to be able to do a bit of everything. But you need them. Different players are going to be able to do different roles better than other players. That's the point, I think.
It's that versatility, isn't it? And you want to see it with your wingers as well. And this is where James Forrest excels a little bit. You want your wingers definitely to be attacking and get that final ball. But at the same time, you want Dies and Maida to be able to track back and help out defensively. So you do want them to do everything, but you need people who are going to specialise in the area.
You know what I find amazing? You know what I find amazing? Watching people try to speak at the same time. It's who's going to get there first. They're like,
I would also argue, though, that see a box-to-box midfielder, like you're saying, they should be able to do a bit of everything. Is that not what we see? Did they do a bit of everything? Like, as Stephen said, focusing on Engels, he's got his goals, he's got his assists, but he's also done his fair share of kind of donkey work. I think that's the issue, is that they all do a bit of everything. We don't have, as you said, that kind of specialist position, specialist attributes. That's what we lack. I think we're kind of all singing off the same page, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Look, the players that we've got, they do a bit of everything. They score goals. McGregor scores goals. Hatate scores goals. Maybe not as many as we'd like. Engels scores goals. McGregor plays a holding midfielder. Hatate can get stuck in once in a blue moon. Bernardo, probably a wee bit more energy than Hatate, but pretty similar in terms of styles is across the board. And like you say, midfielders should be able to do a bit of everything. But I think that is your problem, is that every single midfielder we've got does that exactly. They do a bit of everything, and we don't have one that it's just going to, as I've said on here before, it's going to tackle their granny, sit in front of the back four. We don't have that, because everybody wants to go forward, everybody wants to come back. We don't have a Tom Rogic that's going to sit behind the striker and fire shots for edge of the box or thread balls through, similar to what Matt O'Reilly done. We don't have that.
James, I'm not trying to catch you out with this. I'm trying to kind of build on what you're saying. So would you say that they're a jack of all trades but a master of none? Because you said earlier on, and I'm not trying to catch you out here, and I agree with you, that we need a proper destroyer type of bastard,
Yeah.
a number 6. Okay,
Mhm.
Someone who's physically adept at stopping attacks, but who's also good enough to actually pass the ball. And you said that we also need a number 10. So we've got Cal McGregor, who traditionally plays a number 6, and you've got Hatate, who probably plays the number 10 as well. But at the same time, I think a lot of us are kind of in sync in saying that everybody can do a bit of everything. But are you saying that, as I said, a jack of all trades and master of none, wherever you need to get a specialist number 6 and a specialist number 10 because the chemistry of the midfield is askew?
Aye, in a nutshell, aye. They're all too similar, but that is what a number 8's job is to be. And again, we're talking in numbers, but that is the role of a box-to-box player in it. It's to get forward and be able to help out going back the way as well, play that deep line role. But
I think you need a physical attribute. Somebody said, Brown Warrior said it earlier on, but I think you need a physical attribute to play the number 6. You need to,
not exactly, not exactly, 100%. But that's what I said earlier, though. I think if we had a Victor Wanyama in the team, and then we played any of the two, McGregor and Engels, if we played the two in front of Victor Wanyama, I think you'd see Engels and McGregor thrive. I think they'd be much better than they've shown for spells of this season. Like, for instance, and I know we're going round in circles, but like, if you look at our midfield, who's been our best midfielder this season? It's probably hard to pick somebody out and single somebody out, and I think there's a reason for that. I think after every game that we maybe don't play so well in, or Europe, or Rangers, or whatever, we always have the conversation about the midfield. It's no coincidence. So I do, as I say, I think getting a number 6 in would help us. A number 10 would also help us, but I think it's more likely that we'd go out and sign a holding midfielder.
I think the holding midfielder's more important for the reasons you stated, James. I think that if we get a holding midfielder, then, as you say, it allows Cal McGregor, Engels, whoever it may be, and it would be the same situation in that I think that Cal McGregor would probably be more of the 10 then, but I think that Engels could push on and do that as well. And again, you would be left with that. None of the two of them specialise, but I think that you would have to say that Cal McGregor's probably better in the 10 role than what Engels would be, but Engels can play the 8 as well as McGregor. We're going over that again, but
we might need a new number 1. So
I know, but I think that the 6, if you like, or the holding midfielder, is probably more important for where we are as a midfield now than what a 10 would be.
Yeah, no, and this is the type of avenues we go down after a defeat. 2 hours in, unbelievable chat tonight. But look, before we wrap up, I'm going to open up the floor here. Gav, I'll start with you. I always know you have a topic somewhere. Do you want to talk about anything? Do you want to cover anything before we finish up?
About like football or well,
whatever you want. It could be about your hair. It could be about whatever you want in life. Is there a topic you want to speak about before we go?
Could be about his what?
Is her? Sorry. What did you think it said?
Her.
What's her?
Oh, here we go. Her.
He's hot. That's no way to talk about his wife.
I guess. Did you guys see the clip of Gary Neville talking about the Manchester derby?
No, actually, no.
So it was like a nothing each result, and he said that the players, all of the players, City and United, were going off feeling happy and content that they did their jobs and they never made any mistakes. And he was talking about how football has become robotic. I think it's far more prevalent in England. I don't think it's really symptomatic of Scotland. I think Scotland is a different animal. But I know that we can be guilty of favouring nostalgia and saying football was better back then. But I genuinely think that is the case. Whenever you pay money to watch football, for all these different subscriptions for TNT Sports, for Premier Sports, for Sky Sports, and we watch the football that we get. And probably the best of it is in the Champions League. But if we think about it back in the 2000s and the 90s, I think it was far, far better. There was more jeopardy, and you had players, Mavericks, number 10s who were proper number 10s, and number 11s and number 7s who were proper wingers.
Wee bit of contradiction there, Gav.
Chuck at you.
Number 10 in the 90s, I've never heard of such a thing.
I just think that it was more of a... Again, I could be accused of being nostalgic, but I think football was more of a pure sport back in the 90s and the 2000s and the preceding decades as well, to an extent. Although I think football opened up far more whenever they introduced the pass-back rule, which made it far more entertaining. But I think the 90s was the heyday of football, and that's where my kind of heart still lies when I think about my love of football. But comparing it to nowadays, I think it's a bit of a lesser sport. I'll still love it, I'll still watch it, but I don't think it's as good, and the romanticism is still there compared to back then. So that's my thing.
You think back to your Baggios, Ronaldinho's, kind of all that, playing holding midfield, and they were excellent at it.
James,
shaky
head.
See, to be fair, like see the Gary Neville comments, Gav, what you're talking about, I actually agree with him. All the footballers are micromanaged into their lives, and it's about fitting into a system. There's no real individuality in football no more. I think it's all coached out of players, that flair, that kind of enthusiasm to beat a man, try a trick over and over again. Like we grew up with, like you mentioned Ronaldinho playing in the six, whatever. I know you're joking, but just that off the cuff type stuff, and it's all coached out of players now. And for me, it is a bit of a shite thing. Fabio Capello talked about Pep Guardiola maybe having a damaging effect on football, but then again, them other teams don't have to copy him, so that's their fault, I suppose. But that Manchester derby was a fucking shameful game, and how they can call that a derby makes me sick. They're all basically cuddling each other after the match and going out for dinner after it. No, fuck off. If you're going to do that stuff, don't be shaking hands on the pitch. Do it outside so no one can see you. Just a bunch of absolute wet wipes who get paid hundreds of thousands of pounds, piss and moan that their schedule's too much. Fuck off. Get a grip of yourselves, professional athletes. You have to play football, Ross. I know you're laughing at me. I don't know what else to say, but fuck off. I'm stuck.
It's the way you say it. It's with the venom and vigour that you say it. I love it.
It's disgraceful, man. It's disgraceful. I just think them players, you look at the United team, just littered with absolute shite, and they get paid hundreds of thousands of pounds a week to deliver shite. The Man City team, just, again, they've crumbled this year, but a lot of wet wipes. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of wet wipes now in football, and I think English football really falls under that curtain. But Ross, to yourself, mate, anything you want to cross off, cover before we finish up?
Can you talk about that briefly? I think it's been said to death now, probably in the last year, that football has become too robotic. I think it's, as much as it's the popular thing to say, it's also true. I mean, yesterday, the game was about to kick off. It was maybe about 2 minutes into it, the Manchester derby, and I was actually sitting there going, I don't even want to watch this. It's going to be pish. And Sharon says, any chance I could put, believe it or no, Married at First Sight, and I was like, you know what? Fire it on, because I don't actually care. This game's going to be garbage. And maths went off. I call it maths. But that went off, and I seen the last maybe 15, 20 minutes of the game, and I was just like, thank fuck I never sat the whole time and watched that. I went and made myself busy. It was just shite, and that's indicative to a lot of games in England. It used to be a ritual for me. I had to sit down on a Sunday and watch Super Sunday. Obviously, you weren't going to sit down and watch Crystal Palace against Derby or something like that, but for the most part, there was really good games of football, certainly that 4:30, 4 o'clock time, and even the Monday night football. I don't know if it's an age thing as well, maybe, but it used to be that you get sat down to that. It was brilliant. You couldn't wait for the game. Now I'm just like, take it or leave it, and it's because of the way football is played now. And it might even be added to the fact that VAR takes away from it as well. I think we're talking too much about VAR off the back of games, and people like the drama and stuff like that. And I was for VAR coming in probably before, but it's not been used right. Things are taking too long, and that's taking away from the spectacle as well. It's got to the point now, as Gavin said, a lot of the good games I've seen this season have came in the Champions League. But for the most part, in actual fact, this is probably, even now that there's been that format change in the Champions League, I've probably watched the Champions League more this season than I had probably the last 4 or 5 years, because I was getting a bit disillusioned with that as well. It was all too samey. But this change in the Champions League format has brought a sort of new lease of life to it. But it's, unless it's, to an extent, unless it's Celtic or Scotland now, I rarely watch a full game of football right through. And even if I do sit down to watch a game of football, I find myself getting distracted by other things, whether it be the phone or whatever. And I know maybe the phones have detracted away from the spectacle of football as well, because you get distracted by that. But I get distracted by other things because the game of football, for the most part now, is not holding my full attention unless it's Celtic.
Yeah, I think that's the
generation.
the TikTok generation. I think Ron Boy came in there and said to me that Celtic and Rangers players just go for food. I know that, 100% know that. But I'm not all for the kissing and cuddling and swapping shirts not at the end of a game. Fuck that shit. Do that shit in private. I don't mind it. It's all, they're all friends outside the pitch. But see, when they're on it, just pretend to hate each other. Pretend, at least, for the supporters who turn up. It's a disgrace when, they're all hugging and kissing after an elite straw. But McGinty kind of got off the back of...
Roy Keane was hosting there.
Coincidentally, Roy Keane, one of the greatest number 10s in modern history, by the way.
McGinty, have you anything bugging you want to speak about before we wrap up?
Probably the last 2 hours I could go over it all if you wanted to, but I'm sure we want a bedtime before midnight if we could. There's nothing much I want to revisit that can't hold off till next week. I do agree though on the principle that midfield 5, we need, as Gav says, we need a bit more specialised players. We love the rounded aspects of all, but we definitely need one or two players who can specialise in certain things, but can also then play the ball out if they have to, or if it's the number 10 able to. Because that's one of the things that Tom Rogic lacked, wasn't it? As great as the number 10 he was absolutely fucking useless if we went on the back foot. So a 10 that can come back would be nice, but a 6 who can defend and play the hard bastard role, but can also pass the ball out, all together makes it all look brilliant. Bring back Iwata, fuck it, aye.
Answered everything, James. Unbelievable, Birmingham. He scored a wonder goal in one of the games I watched. I think it was in the FA Cup. I'm sure it was on the BBC. That's the only reason I had it on. But James,
I thought you wanted
mate,
to get away from bringing players back, Stephen.
Oh, you're funny, aren't you? Hilarious. I mean, the player trade model and a player from Birmingham City coming back for $2.5 million. It's a bit different. But I get where you're coming from. I suppose you got me there. James, what about yourself, mate?
What about me?
What about
Jesus? Anything to add before we wrap up?
No. I've just been going to my bed with one eye open tonight. I'm feeling in case Gav comes to my door now, but I've enjoyed it, man. It's been a good laugh.
Yeah, no, it has been good. And everyone in the comments, still 58 live, which is fantastic. So, if anyone's new in the comments, please like and subscribe, all that fun stuff. And we appreciate everyone sticking with us. I was maybe going to plan on doing a Wednesday double pivot because I'm free that evening. I don't know who can join me, but hopefully some people out of this congregation can join me for that. We'll have a wee chat about, current football affairs and also Celtic next in that. If it doesn't happen, that's fair enough. But we'll go for definitely. We'll be live on the Friday night. I'm discussing the upcoming game against Kilmarnock at home, which should have been our title-winning party, but Celtic went and fucked it, so I'll have to wait another couple of weeks. But we'll get there eventually. We'll go for that line.
We might win the league on the Sunday if Rangers lose at Pittodrie and we win.
There's a question I want to ask you all before we wrap it up. This gets brought up almost every fucking season. That somebody will say, "Oh, but would you rather win the league on our own terms? Like we win the game, that wins us the league." And I get what the argument is, but at the same time, at least 8 games. Have we already won it by winning all of the games previous? So even if it gets to Sunday and the Sheep beat the Huns, that's still us winning the league. It's not like the Sheep have won the league for us. We still won it by winning the games previous. That just does my tits in.
That was so disrespectful with Sheep and the Huns. I can't believe that, man.
Sorry. I've had a few I've let it out.
Yeah.
Many of you had that. What's that, your fourth can?
Aye. This is not much.
Good for you.
Good going. Good going. But yes, we'll wrap it up there. I'll look to do something on Wednesday night. Hopefully we double pivot, have a wee chat about, as I said, current football stuff. Have a wee bit of a laugh. But if not, definitely Friday. And everyone that's kept with us this long, we're 2 hours, 20 minutes in, which is fantastic. Everybody, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.